Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by fellow Brit and expert hand letterer Ian Barnard, American retro design expert Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator Lisa Glantz. In this week's episode, we look at focus and productivity for designers. Often it can be all too easy to get sidetracked or to struggle to focus on what's really important, whether that's a client deadline or that primary thing that you know will progress your creative career. Today we dig into our personal struggles finding focus and offer our best tips for what has actually worked for us. There's no shiny productivity hacks to be found here, just genuine solutions from the four of us. So, let's get into the show. So this week we're talking about focus, which I realise goes a lot wider than just design, but I feel like it's definitely a big issue for all four of us and hopefully a lot of designers listening at home, because really focus ties into project deadlines, just getting stuff done, growing your creative business, progressing in your career. It all kind of comes back to how focused you are in your day-to-day work, I think. So I don't even know who should kick this off because I feel like we're all equally terrible at this. I know, Ian, you always say how much you struggle with it. Dustin, you're looking ready. I'm gonna pass the gauntlet to you on this one. What are your thoughts on focus?
Well, I think focus is important. I think, like everyone, I'm not great at focusing. Hence, we actually had a conversation outside of the show where it ended up being mostly about focus. I didn't know when we started talking, but for people listening, a lot of times different people in the show will meet up and talk about things. And I talked to Tom and asked him for some advice. And he was going through and looking at my business, and he started calculating the amount of time I don't focus and how much it's costing me. And it was something like, what was it, Tom? It was like I was spending enough time reading emails that it was like $1,000 something a month.
Wow.
Yeah, it was something crazy. It was like an hour a day, which is quite a big chunk out of a 7 or 8 hour day. And you said you'd subscribe to all these marketing emails and you never read them. You just kind of clicked into them, didn't fully digest the information,
Right?
but kind of had them sitting there in case you needed them later.
I hoarded them. Yes.
And so I said,
Oh.
I said, why don't you? And same for you, Lisa. In that case, why don't you unsubscribe from all of them, resubscribe from another separate inbox that isn't your main work inbox, and then if you do want to go in and look at them at some point, they're in the other inbox, but they're not impacting and pulling you away from your day-to-day work.
Yeah.
And so, Dustin, you've got like an hour back now, right, in your day?
Oh, at least.
And even if it's just like, because the thing is, when I'm subscribed to so many different things that, it might be I'm buying something over here or stuff like that. There's a really good app or a really good online thing called Unroll Me, which, because even just like clicking on an email that's just might be something updating you about something that's non-design related or your business related, just takes you away. And it's actually what I had for an analogy of this was like, when you're trying to lose weight, you think, I'm just eating these 3 meals a day. And you don't realize that between the meals, you're snacking on like, I know, a couple of like chocolates or a couple of things here. And it's all those little tiny bits which really add up together to make, whether that's your time, Dustin was saying how Tom had shown him that he's losing money because of all this time you're spending on the emails. It's the little things that distract us, not the big things. The big things can distract us, but
that's exactly what I was going to say. Is the thing about focus in general, I think, is that it creeps. So it's not normally some big thing that eliminates your focus. It's lots of little things. And for instance, with the emails, just like Tom had said, unsubscribe from these. I unsubscribe from these. All of a sudden, the little dings I get constantly that pull me towards them all day eliminate, we're gone 90% of them. and I got a lot of focus back. But I really do think it's right. Focus is so many of these little things distracting you. It's the emails, it's a phone call, it's a social media thing.
And they're designed to do that, right? Because these apps and these social media networks, they want your time and they want your attention. That's where they get their revenue from. So they're designed to derail your day and distract you.
It's true.
And it's really annoying. I deleted the Facebook and Instagram apps on my phone a while back. And it was so much better. I instantly seemed to get this fresh time. And now they're back on there because I'm using them a little bit. Like I'm doing my Instagram tips. And I'm using Facebook to kind of keep an eye on our business Facebook page. So I do need them, but I really resent it because 95% of my time on them are just like looking at a feed that kind of periodically refreshes with more nonsense. And it's such a drain. And I'm really trying to fix this at the minute because maybe not in work hours, but in my free time, it's like I should at least be using my free time to properly relax and unwind. And I'm just looking at this stupid damn screen.
Yeah.
And it's infuriating. And Dustin, the issue for you was it was literally cutting into your workday. And as designers and professionals, I guess, like time is money. And so it isn't just about being bad for your health or distracting or focus. It's like you're paying someone.
Yeah.
Like your time could be better spent elsewhere. It's like you're forking out quite a lot of money to look at this nonsense.
Well, because what we did is we got the revenue that I was making a month, or the profit. I think I can't remember which one of the two, revenue or profit, one of the two. We got it, and then we divided it up by how many hours I was working, and then we looked at how many hours I was spending on things like, for instance, email, and then we looked at how much time am I taking chatting on Skype and different things. And when you add it up, it was like thousands of dollars. And you really realize this does technically cost me something. It cost me that money, and it cost me time with my family or, doing something else.
Okay, so I've got a weird one to bring to this episode because it would be very easy to be preachy because I know the right approach to this stuff. It's that you work smart and you work hard. So the idea is you audit your time, you work out the stuff that is wasteful, you take that out, and then you either work less if that's what you want to do, or if you want to really grow what you're doing and be successful, you fill that new time with more productive stuff that's going to have more impact. And it's a pretty simple concept and it definitely does work. But for me, I feel like there's a balance because when all your time is on hyper impactful work, it actually burns you out.
Yeah.
It's almost like our brains need that kind of nonsense in small doses.
But in a healthy dose so it doesn't interrupt other stuff. Yeah. I recently for a while now I've been trying to implement this schedule that I have every day, and it's only really recently that I've really kind of stuck to it because I started watching, I can't even remember the guy's name and I do apologize, but he did a study where he actually worked out how much time or how much your brain needs to readjust every time you flick between an email ping. You've just heard the email ping, you go to the email, you quickly read it, you don't address it because it actually needs your time and energy. You go back to the task that you were doing, and it takes you apparently like 60% of the time to readjust your brain to back to the task that you were doing.
I mean, I've literally had it where that happens and then I say, what was going on?
Exactly.
Yeah, you forget what you're doing.
So since I've been kind of aware of that, every time I hear an email in the morning, because I kind of in the mornings I have a schedule. Like I get in, I try and do my drawing in the morning, like an hour, and then I do either product or website work or client work or whatever I'm doing. I don't look at email, and then only in the afternoon do I start addressing customer queries and emails, and it is a lot better because you get a lot more done. But it's difficult when you hearing pings and your phone's going off and emails are coming in, and you almost have to quit.
One tip, right? You could turn off notifications.
Yeah, but I'm ridiculous. I still think that in case.
Yeah.
I know it's not like a total like focus, but it's kind of there. It's half.
Can I say on that? So I had that same mindset where I kept notifications on for everything because I felt like the best way to put it is that the other shoe was going to drop for like 4 years. I felt like that. The shoe has never dropped, and I'm finally comfortable with the idea of turning off the emails, turning off the notifications. That email isn't coming, and if it is, it's just an anomaly. So, yeah.
Is that an American saying? I don't never heard that one before. The shoe drops. Is there a...
Yeah, no, I've heard that one. Dustin's been hopping for 4 years.
What?
It sounds like something similar to what we say, but I can't remember what it is.
Every time the sneaker drops.
Is that the British version?
No.
Okay, focus.
Can I use another analogy, because they always help me?
Yeah, please do, and an English one, please.
The thing is, like you say, it's not going to be preachy because I don't do a lot of stuff I say. I know that I was more efficient when.
Sorry. That was classic. Ian. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah.
I try and live out what I know is right, but it doesn't work. But when I was employed, I found it much easier to focus when I was self-employed, because having someone that looks over you, or someone else is dependent on your work, was helping me to focus a bit more. I still got distracted, but what I did was work. HIIT workouts, so high intensity workouts where you do a short bit of super physical work, in a short period of time, and then you rest, and then you do it over again.
Yeah.
Or,
so you were in an office and you went to go work out instead of doing your work. That's what you're saying?
I'd have a great body if I did that. But I found I've been doing that the past couple of years, and I found like that workout like 10 times better than anything else I've ever done. Even running, of sort of helping me sort of maintain my weight and getting me fitter. And it also, I do see it, but I don't follow it in my own work. If I focus, like we've been saying, focus on just like one thing for half an hour, right? Really focus and nothing else. Nothing, no looking at Facebook or checking Instagram or whatever, maybe, or checking emails. Then I get so much more done in that half an hour, and then I just rest. I used to read a book for like 5 minutes while in between those sort of rest times when I was at employed work, but now I don't do that anymore, and I should do. It's just that small chunks, and I know that it works, but I don't know why I can't get into it.
I can attest to that working for me. So I've really wanted to learn to make fonts better for a while, and I just made a really simple commitment that I would take 20 minutes every evening and spend it working on making a font using glyphs. And sure enough, like, it was just 20 minutes no matter what. I cut it off at 20 minutes, and I have something done. It looks great, and I felt so good every day, even with just those little 20 minutes of doing it. And now I just increased it to 30, and just those slow little increases. But that little focused area, it's amazing what you can get done in even a week or two of 20 or 30 minute bursts once a day.
Yeah, I mean, it's the theme of this episode, but focus really is it. Like, I've had a similar thing historically with the team at Design Cuts, who are obviously an amazing bunch, but quite often they've all been needing me for various stuff. And so when you hear your name called out 10 times in 5 minutes, you can't get anything done. And so what often happens is everyone goes home for the day, and then I get my entire day's work done in like 2 hours after hours, and you tear through your to-do list. And I've seen it like between the team as well, and I see it in the design agency in our office as well. And you have to block it off, and you have to do stuff in batches. So if people are calling out for you and you've got emails pinging, so whether it's your phone or other people, if people are kind of dragging your attention away from what you should be doing, it doesn't work. And so the best way is to let all those demands stockpile somewhere, and then you just tear through them in one batch.
Right.
So you know what I mean? So it's like, well, my emails, I'm going to blitz through them from 4 to 5. I'm going to deal with this other thing from 5 until 5:30. And you just have to segment these bits of time, because if your 8-hour day, 10-hour day, whatever it is, if every hour is jumping and juggling between 10 different things, none of them get done.
Right. Well, and sometimes, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I've tried all sorts of ways of breaking things up and saying, this is how much I'll do something. And one way was, I'd say, I'm just going to get the payment gateway set up for this site, for instance. And next thing I know, that took me 6 hours, and I thought it would take an hour, and I didn't, and it throws off the whole rest of the things I need to focus on for the day. So I finally decided I'm just going to put time limits on this. It has to be focus time. I can't be goofing off, but I have to put time limits, or else sometimes things just expand out. So I think Tom's idea of I'm just spending an hour on email. I'm going to focus hardcore on that email for that hour. Guarantees that you're not going to get so off track and be 5 hours down the road in emails.
Well, it makes you rush it as well, but in a good way.
Yeah.
So if I know it's the same, if I know some emails have to get done, but I've got, I don't know, a dinner date or something, then I will get them done in twice the speed because I know they can't wait, and I know I cannot miss my evening thing. Yeah. So it's like I'll just tear through them. And that's so focused. But sorry, just to jump back to my earlier point though, I can't work like that all the time. No. If I'm in that hyper focused, hyper productive mode for any length of time, it really does burn you out. And I only really managed that in the first year of Design Cuts, where I remember people said stuff like, aim to get one big job done per day. And I'd think, suckers, I got 15 done today. Like, what's wrong with them? So, and it was like that constant thing where it's like,
yeah, then you turn into Skeleton Tom.
Yeah. And yeah, like I seriously thought, like, what is wrong with them? I was like, how unproductive are they that I can get 15 times the amount of work done? Because there was no wasted time and there was no unproductive work. Like everything was having a big impact. But to everyone listening, find that balance. So yeah, don't get sidetracked by social media, but don't kill yourself either.
Because you were a focus machine, but it was unhealthy.
Yeah. It starts becoming unhealthy when you take it to extreme. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think Dustin mentioned it in a previous episode where like you would try and work in the evening and spend like 4 hours on something because you think you're being efficient, but you're not, because you're just like spending time on it. You think you're doing it, but then if you just left it and just did it in the morning, it'd take you 1 hour because it
so true.
You need that rest because you've been working all day and then try and work in the evening. And sometimes I think, actually, I just need a rest. And like, yeah, I get there in the morning and I just like rattle through it really quickly. And it sometimes there's an equation where, you know, time spent on it equals productivity, but it doesn't always. Sometimes, you know, you spend on it and it's like you're running a car without any fuel. It's just not going to get anywhere. And sometimes you have to stop and think, actually, look, I need to get some fuel in it so it can then go off again.
I think there's this thing, I'm inventing this now. Right now, I'm literally inventing a term right now. It's called mental hygiene. Probably exists, but like focus hygiene, right? Like you need time.
That sounds terrible.
What?
That sounds terrible. I want to like wash my hands. Yeah, it sounds like a dirty phrase or something.
Oh, well, it could be if you want to go that road, but let's take that for a different episode.
Tom also needs to get his mental hygiene in check.
What I more mean by that is,
come on, guys, focus.
There's always things. For instance, I talked to Suzanne, someone who works at Retro Supply with me, and lots of times she'll look out the window and be like, "Wait, what is that out that window? What's going on out that window?" So the point is,
sorry for everyone who can't see the visual here, we can see a video feed of Dustin. You just impersonated a dog there, and I'm sure Suzanne doesn't look like that. You're
no.
Like, what is that, boy?
She looks very graceful doing it. I look like a weird dog when I do it. But the point being that we have so much stimulus that I think even just to sit and let our brains clear, which is something that happened for thousands of years before the Industrial Revolution, without trying to get all smart sounding or trying to sound all philosophical about it, but it's true. We used to have a lot more quiet time and time to just sit and reflect. And I think not having that actually cuts our efficiency and our focus huge amounts. I think it's totally okay to do nothing or to drink a glass of wine. You know?
Actually, talking about that, me and my wife were reading an article about how about children being bored, and that you know, if they say, "Oh, I'm bored," then we like give them like an iPad or a phone or watch TV. Whereas they said, you know, one way you can sort of combat this is say, well, if you're bored, here's some chores to do. And then they immediately find something to play with. But just the fact that we don't actually spend time, like if you're waiting in a doctor's surgery, we check our phones. We don't just sit there and do nothing, you know. And I think, it is actually really important to just practice stillness of not having the stimuli, because what happens is it just numbs our brains being constantly entertained by, you know, constantly, something going on and being absorbed, rather than just sitting there and just letting our brain rest like a muscle.
Well, exactly.
I literally just bought this book yesterday. It's by a philosopher named Bertrand Russell, and he talks about boredom, just like you're talking about, Ian, and the value of how important it is to be bored.
I love that you read philosophy in your spare time. You've just become even more intellectual in my book. It's amazing. Okay, so to loop this back to design specifically, I think a good example of this is the stereotype that designers leave everything last minute, particularly client projects. You kind of procrastinate and you have the last minute rush. And Ian, I don't even need to ask you, I know that you do this. I do it as well. Dustin and Lisa, you in the same boat occasionally?
No.
Can I say something to justify the is that it's become easier since I've come to realize that that's the way I work and I can't change it, because I try and pre-plan. You know, it might be out some mundane like packing, like for going on holiday, but I just can't do it. I physically can't do it, and it has to be when it's about 3 days before I go, where everything clicks in and I can do it. Other than that, it just literally I can't focus on it, and so I've come to realize, okay, this is how I work, and embracing that has actually helped me. And so, it's like solid focus, you know, because some people can like when you're at school and you're at exam, some people would just like start as soon as they say start revising, and you'd be like, yeah, they'd go straight away, and I'll be like, I just can't do that. And so for me, it was cramming it last minute, and it worked for me, but for some people it doesn't. And I think it's embracing what your type is like, what, you know, being self-aware that you work like that.
I mean, I think it's that classic thing of I think a lot of creative people work better under pressure, because I think it goes hand in hand with what we're discussing, the whole focus thing. So you kind of forced to focus, whereas before you give yourself the leeway to maybe mess around with that and maybe go and do this because it's so much nicer, you know. So I think naturally creative people, because there's so much going on in their brains, they kind of need that deadline. I don't think there's anything wrong with being like that. I think that's fine. But I think where it maybe gets dangerous or bad or whatever is if you're constantly working like that, for every single project that's on top of each other, that just means you'll end up burning out. I don't know. But if you have gaps, that's fine. And Ian, it sounds like you juggle that quite well. So it obviously works brilliantly for you.
Oh no, I was just thinking of because I used to be when I like release a product, I know that I want to try and get it out on a Tuesday, so I'd start working on a Friday to get it.
Wow, really?
Or not start working on completely. Like the finishing stages would be Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and I'd like literally work till the early hours, but then I'd rest. Like the rest of that week, I'd be like sort of a bit more chilled out. You know, I wouldn't work too hard.
Yeah,
but
that's cool. I think it's great. If it works for you, that's brilliant. I mean,
it's hard. It's not. No, I wouldn't recommend. It's really hard, but
yeah.
Well, you know what? I like that we're not always that preachy, because the whole theme of the show is that we're honest, and we don't always have all the answers, and like no one's perfect, but the four of us are certainly not perfect with how we work always.
No.
And I would rather be upfront, and I think a lot of people listening tend to empathize or relate to what we're saying, because it's not like, well, it's easy for us and you should just do it this way. And I don't know, for me, I'm very similar with the last minute thing, and it definitely went into my freelance work back in the day, and it still impacts my work now, although with the support of a team it's getting better and better, and you kind of have to have deadlines that perhaps you set the deadline earlier than it is to like trick yourself almost. So there's a few little hacks, but I'll give you a quick example of back at university, because this is like indicative of how I worked as a freelance designer. So we had essays which would be due a few times each year, and one of the longer ones was like 5,000 words, which was like a mini dissertation. And every single one for my entire 4-year degree, I pulled an all-nighter for, without fail. I started it the night before. I stayed up all night. I didn't sleep, and then I handed it in with 5 minutes to spare. And every time I thought, I can never do this to myself again. I feel terrible. I feel
I
horrendous.
know.
And I would do it again. And I think the worst one, I had 2 deadlines due within 2 days. So I pulled one all-nighter, ran like a maniac to hand it in, and thought, oh God, I never want to do this again. And then I thought, damn it, I've got another one due the next day. So I pulled another all-nighter, and I didn't sleep for like 3 days. And I ran to hand this thing in, this essay, and I was like running into traffic because I was so tired, I didn't see it coming. and I ran, and I got there as the person was like collecting all the essays from the box where you posted in, and they were literally locking up the box, and I had to plead with them to accept it. So I was like 10 seconds away from failing. And you just think, you're like, what is wrong with human nature? What is wrong with my psyche that I keep doing this to myself? Like, it's such an obvious thing. It's like, even if I, finished it 10 minutes earlier, it wouldn't be such a panic. If I did it a week earlier, it would be the best thing in the world. But you keep doing it to yourself. And I don't know what the hell's wrong with me in that respect.
But I mean, did you enjoy those tasks? Because I did the same thing when it was stuff I didn't want to do. I also left it to the last minute. I mean,
yeah.
was it-
Honestly, it was both. It was both for me. So it was
Oh.
essays I didn't want to do at university, and it was freelance work, which I did enjoy.
Wow, that's so interesting. I love the difference. It's amazing.
The opposite of focus, I suppose, is procrastination, isn't it? And I want to recommend a TED talk here. There's one on procrastination, and it's the funniest one you'll see. And it just talks about like the distraction monkey. And as soon as you try and do this distraction monkey comes along, it just takes away your. And
I might argue that the procrastination isn't the opposite, but it's the lead up to extreme focus.
if it actually turns into focus, because you could procrastinate.
Is that philosophy reading coming through, Dustin?
Just was thinking, for me, it seems like that for all of us, right?
I procrastinate because I am.
But there's that good quote about procrastination by Jessica Hitch, where it says the work that you do when you procrastinate is probably the work you should be doing for the rest of your life. And actually, that's quite true, because like the stuff I was procrastinating when I was trying to do the freelance stuff and being a jack of all trades was calligraphy and doing my shop stuff. And now that's the stuff I'm doing full time. And so
in that case, most people would get paid to watch Netflix.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could just say that. Thing is, is it classified as work watching Netflix? You don't get paid for it.
Well, it is. It is interesting. I heard this saying about. This is going to be edited out.
Don't swear.
So why am I saying it? I feel like I have to say it now that I've thought of it. I heard this saying that said, if you think about like what would flash through your mind in your last moments of your life, those are the things you should be doing in your life. Of course, we think about our families, but if you really think about it, what things in your life flash through that were really meaningful in terms of your work, like that you felt like mattered? And I thought about that and thought there is a very slim little line of focused, trying to fit this in, work that really matters, and there's so much stuff that's just fluff.
There is a lot of fluff, definitely.
Fluffy bunnies.
To push back on that, though, that kind of links back to what I was saying about how you can't focus all the time.
Yeah,
because if you only did that 1%, like you kind of need the surrounding stuff for balance.
It's true. Yep, I agree.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot, honestly.
Yeah, and also just to elaborate on that, I think that the non-focus stuff doesn't mean you have to not do the stuff that you do when you're focused. I know that doesn't make sense at all. I'll try and elaborate on that.
Yeah,
Like,
please do.
well, okay, obviously everyone knows I'm an illustrator, right? So that's what I do a lot of the time. But obviously there's admin and there's client stuff and product stuff, and that's not related to that. So the stuff that I do to unwind and not be so deeply focused and, as you said, like burnout stage, is actually illustration work. But it's not illustration work for a mean, like it doesn't have to go anywhere. I do it as a relaxation, so I don't put pressure on myself to achieve this is going to be for a product, or this is going to be for a client, or this is whatever. So you can still do the stuff that you always want to do every day, but not in a necessarily such a deeply productive way, if that makes sense.
No, I like that.
How do you differentiate? Because I find I struggle to.
Yeah.
If I'm doing I love doing calligraphy and lettering and stuff. How do you differentiate? Because I always think, oh, how can I use this? How can I make it into a post, or how can I make it into a product, or whatever? How do you differentiate?
Well, actually, it's a fairly newish practice for me. But what I've done is I allot time. So then whatever I produce in that time isn't necessarily going to go into anything. Sometimes it ends up being into a product or whatever, but when I sit down for that, it's almost like a meditation. Like you're not sitting down to create something necessarily for a reason. It's just to allow your body and your mind and whatever to relax and zone out for that hour. So it's
Lisa, you've kind of answered this question here, but what do you guys think about do our jobs ruin our passions to some extent?
it can.
Because you know what I mean? It's like if you're a writer, you can never really write again for fun because it's going to lead to something.
It can definitely. It's like a mother who enjoys cooking, and then she has 3 children and she's got to cook every night for a chore. It becomes a chore. It's not enjoyable anymore, So then she needs to take or make an effort to. The kids have gone away for the weekend with their friends, whatever. This weekend I'm just going to bake for myself. That kind of thing. You almost have to rekindle that love for what you do, because I think if you don't, the whole focus and getting this stuff done and being productive, you end up actually falling out of love of what you were in love with to begin with, in a way.
I think I would say on that it depends on how you're focusing yourself. If your focus is outward success and admiration, or money, or meeting the expectations of people you've never met in your work, then it will make you miserable doing that work. But if you start from a place where you're rooted in things that you like and you focus on that, I think you will find a lot more happiness, even if it is your job.
Yeah.
And I know that's a hard balance and maybe sometimes not very possible for people, but I think what ruins it is the pressure, the financial pressures and the pressures to please people when things don't please yourself. Anything that motivates you to please yourself or to not please yourself for other gains, I think can really ruin things.
I think the minute there's pressure on that particular thing that you love doing, that's an external pressure. So whether you're an illustrator and you getting pressure from clients or a graphic designer, and they're constantly deadlines, eventually the pressure actually takes away the joy. And then and it starts affecting you. You don't want to be doing this anymore. But I mean, for example, when I was working as a magazine designer, and all I did was from one deadline to the next, it's like a really routine thing. You can't divert. You got to go to print at a certain time, and it was always last minute. It was a rush. It was horrible. But I started not enjoying graphic design, and then I started doing freelance work, and it was totally different to my daily routine of magazine design. And all of a sudden, I loved designing again because it reminded me why it was so cool. So the pressure was removed, and it's difficult though. But I think you need to make an effort, and I think that's important, especially if you are a very focused person. I don't know.
I have an old business mentor, and he always used to say something along the lines of the work always becomes work. So it kind of counters, those people where they're like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And it's
Mm.
like,
Nah.
yes, you will. It's
Yeah.
like, you might love it, but you will be exhausted. Like, you will work really hard. You'll get bad days still, good days.
Of course.
And yeah, I want to meet the people outside of shiny social media postulating who literally do love every single minute and never feel like they're working, because I kind of don't believe they exist.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like anytime I talk to someone one-on-one, well, very much like we're doing now, you realize that it's not that people are miserable bastards. It's just that it's never as wonderful as it can come across in these beautiful posts.
It's not a shiny unicorn fairies and gnome land, it's got the ugly bits too.
Except for in Lisa's case, where it literally does seem like it really is like that.
Yeah, I don't
think,
know.
like for me, I've so intertwined my work and my social feed that it's hard to differentiate them and just spend, sort of remove from the work and the social and become just me doing stuff, just for my own pleasure without getting that part of my brain going, oh, this would look nice over a picture of some mountains, or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I need to sort of get back into that sort of not feeling the pressure to have something finished or something that needs to be posted. And I think we spoke about that the other week, and that social media has distracted me too much the other way from actually even my work. So
yeah,
Ian, I'm curious.
You're always curious.
When you're painting on a violin or doing something where you're setting up your cameras and doing it and recording that work, are you focused and enjoying yourself, or are you focused and can't wait till it's done in the back of your head?
We're going honest.
Oh, this is. It depends on what I'm doing, I suppose. There has been some points where I just need to get this done, because I was posting every day. But then there's like the stuff on the. I quite enjoyed, like, the violin was really enjoyable. I quite enjoy the putting stuff. It's quite, there's a pressure there because I can only do it I only have one shot at it and it has to be done. But I think I get more pleasure out of. There's certain things I get more pleasure out than others, and sometimes, like, it feels like I'm I'm doing just work and I'm not really in it, just because I think it might be maybe popular, so it brings in more traffic. But that, I think everyone has to do that at some point. It's like I really don't like advertising, but I've got to do it. Otherwise, no one, like from my products and stuff, because otherwise, how are people going to know that I've released something?
But when the cameras are set up and the camera's set up over you and you're drawing, you know that the recording's going, you're hoping it's going right and the lights are on. Are you in a zone as you do that, or in a flow, or is that the part where you're looking forward to everything and then you start that part? Because for me, sometimes the actual screen recording or whatever I'm doing or turning on cameras is the part where I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this.
I think it's really hard because, like, you're not in the natural position as well, because the camera, like, at the moment, my studio is not big enough to have a rig set up. So it's not always in the, like, I can't have the paper at the right angle and I can't have my hand at the right angle. So it's a little bit of like, and then sometimes I start shaking because I can't, I like recording. I want to get this right, especially if it's a one-off thing or, I'm running out of time. And so there is a bit of pressure. And even down to like my YouTube tutorials where I'm recording it, I like get all the way through and then suddenly I forget what I'm supposed to, something I've included. I'm like, oh no, go back. And so sometimes, yeah, it's just a bit of a mixture of whether sometimes I enjoy doing it. I quite enjoy speaking to the camera. But sometimes I'm like, I need to get it out because I've been like sitting on it for ages and it's now become this thing.
It's monkey.
Yeah. I get an idea, I get inspired. Sometimes I just do it straight away. Sometimes I dwell on it, and then suddenly it becomes this thing of like and then this doubt comes in your mind. Is this just a silly idea, or is this going to work, or is this a little bit of subpar of what I'm normally releasing, and will anyone enjoy it or not? So yeah, it's a mixture of like emotions drawn up with. It's not a fine line between whether I do or not, and yeah, so it's hard. It's a hard one to answer really, because it's just
Okay, so have we got any tips for what actually does work for us when it comes to design and focus? So we've got design projects. Sounds like Lisa's kind of the master at this more than the rest of us.
Really?
But I don't know. For me, like my big one would be batching up your work and being a bit more self-aware about what pulls your attention.
Yeah.
So I think just trying to divide stuff up into batches for me is better than any kind of system, because that isn't really a system. That's just good sense.
Yeah.
Like Dustin, you talked about, I'm going to work on this day and this that day, or when people are doing like the Pomodoro technique or whatever, I'm going to do 20 minutes on this and then take a 5-minute break. And any systems like that tend to fall apart for me. So I think it's more like a wider philosophy of I'm just going to focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And trying to stick to that. Lisa,
Yeah.
what would your kind of main points
mine's
be?
also kind of loose in a way. I think it's good to schedule your day and have a kind of routine so that you don't fight it. In the morning, you can decide to do X for a few hours. I do recommend your creative stuff needs to be in the morning, because I think that's when you're fresh.
I agree.
And then do all the admin-y things that don't require so much creativity in the afternoon. And if you get your body and your mind into that routine, you tend to sort of start doing it just naturally without having to force yourself to do it. And also loosely, you can have what you just said. Mondays can be this, Tuesdays can be that. Maybe you can leave. That's what I do. I leave Wednesdays and Thursdays kind of open, and then Fridays again. I have a focus. So have like loose themes, I guess, in your week, because that'll also help.
I have been trying the loose theme too, and that has been effective. It's been almost a month now, and
Yeah.
Tom is
How's it
right.
going?
Tom just mentioned this and said it didn't work well for him, and because it falls apart. And I agree to some degree it does. So like you said, Lisa, it has to be loose. I tend to have themes and I kind of stick to them, but life happens, things come up, and I go off of it. But
Absolutely.
I always know, well, like today is a marketing day for me, so I might work on a product if I need to, but I'll go back to the marketing. But as far as the real hardcore focus things that have worked for me is setting shorter time limits than I think I need. So if I feel like I can do it for an hour, only do it for 20 minutes.
Okay. That's clever. Yeah.
That seems to help me, because then I know I can do it. And it turns out I get more done by just consistently breaking those blocks up and then building them.
Yeah.
The second thing to add to that is end on a high note. So I've been working on building fonts. So when I hit the high point of making a font where I feel like I've had some sort of success, where something looks good when I test it out, I say that's the time to end it.
Yeah.
End it
That's
where
brilliant.
it's an open loop where you want to come back the next day and continue
Because
it,
you're amped. Yeah.
as opposed to a miserable part.
That takes willpower, because when I'm on the high note, I cannot stop. Like I literally cannot walk away until it's
It is
done.
hard. It is hard, but it is good to stop there. Yeah. That's hard.
And Dustin, can I just add as well? I totally get where you guys are coming from with the breaking up the days. For me, it might not work doing it by days, but linking in the batch mentality, it's like you could say, it's like every Wednesday we set aside time for the podcast. It could be like every Thursday morning.
Yeah.
You batch chase up all your invoices from clients or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's so much better than for taking that example. You need to do that with your invoices. You need to follow up and whatnot. That's an important part for most designers. But if you're kind of doing like one invoice every 3 hours throughout your week, that's distracting. If you tear through them all at one time, that's a lot better.
Yeah. It sounds like we're talking about the same thing, but you're kind of making it more broad, which is probably an easier way to use it, where you're saying have themes, aka batches, where you're saying this is a theme.
Yeah.
It can be for an hour once a week. It can be for a day, however you choose to do it.
Exactly.
Ian, how about you?
I would say remove temptations in order to focus, because like even if it's like turning like I've turned off some notifications for any comments on my social media now, and that's a bit like the email as well, because it's amazing how just what happens is this spiraling effect. So like I go and check a comment or something someone might have left, and then I suddenly find that I'm browsing through Facebook looking at some videos of cats or something, and I'm not really interested in cats, so it would just be and what happens is this spiraling effect that you just get distracted. So removing, like unsubscribing from emails and stuff like that, there's always like there might be something in an email you click on, and then you click on it, just this chain of click-ons goes. Like I end up somewhere I didn't like. I ended up I think it was like watching like a trick shot video on YouTube, and I'd gone on there just to get some information from my channel settings or something, and I completely missed. And then I'd come off YouTube and gone on something else, and I was like, I'd forgotten to do what I needed to do by getting distracted. So it's
next thing you know, you're watching magic tricks.
That is classic.
Do you ever see those videos on YouTube where the comments are like, "How did I end up here?"
What have I just watched?
Yeah.
How did we all get here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm in the weird part of the internet again.
Yeah, and I think it's just such a, and I think if you remove certain things, like like whether it is opening your, I really need to take my own advice and your advice for all of this, but like just like not turning because like my email is an application, so if I don't click and open it in the morning, I'm sure the world won't crumble if I don't open it until 12 o'clock, say. And the same with other things I do as well. It's and I just realised actually that the reason why I did a year of posting every week to YouTube, I forgot about this, and I made it like Thursday was my day that I would do it and upload it. And I managed to stick to that. Sometimes I might only do it on Friday, might be a day late, but I stick to that for a year. And then when I went out, when I didn't have a day I would post it, I found I wasn't posting it at all. And so it does make having a routine really helpful.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise actually, and this is the problem, you don't realise you're in this routine. And so you set something up, and I think you have to, just it's just that regularity that causes you to become efficient, I suppose. I just realised that I had some efficiency, and I didn't even realise it. Sometimes hasn't happened for this year, but
I feel like it's necessary to really quickly just bring up the irony of this entire episode, in the sense that we work in a profession where we're literally, if we're good at what we're doing, we're good at interrupting people and stopping them from focusing.
That's true.
Yeah, actually, my whole content is all about people coming onto social media watching like me write something.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's more advertising. We're not trying to interrupt people, but a lot of times design does involve trying to be like, look at me, come look at this thing.
Yeah.
Forget about what you were doing and buy some Coke.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, I would love to say, if you've just spent 45 minutes listening to us, I really hope you have something better to do, some big important deadline or project that you put up. No, I do think this is why I'm all about the podcast this year, because it's one of the few mediums where you can do other stuff. And we do get people where we get the privilege and honor of accompanying them on a car journey or in the gym or while they're working in the office, and they say, oh, it's like I've got teammates and other people in the office, which is freaking cool. I love that. Those are my favorite comments, where it's like,
me too.
I feel like I've got like a team of fellow designers around me. I'm like, that is awesome.
I'm waiting for a comment that says it helps send my child to sleep.
It might. Tom, you just remind me quickly. I did an exercise today, a drawing exercise.
Mhm.
Basically, it was for the course that I'm doing now. One where you draw without anything going on, so just in silence.
Yep.
Another one where you kind of half watching a video, and another one where you
Yep.
listening to a podcast. And
Mhm.
I actually found that listening to a podcast, which makes sense because the music does the same for me. I actually was more productive and more focused having that going
Really?
on. Yeah.
Mm.
So what I wanted to comment on was I think you need to find what best works for you to focus. So it's not necessarily like Ian could be different to me, you, Tom, could be different to, you know, Dustin. You need to find
Yep.
what helps you focus the most. And if it means, you know, putting off all the stuff that distracts you, or if it means you physically go and work in a different room, you know, to get stuff
Mhm.
done, then that's what you need to do.
It kind of makes sense that would work because it seems like it occupies your mind just enough to turn off the critic.
Exactly. That is exactly what happened. I actually, I had to shut myself up in a way. So myself was
Well,
removed.
how do you think we feel every week, Lisa?
Yeah. So it was a very interesting exercise.
Kidding, of course.
What's that?
No, I think that makes kidding, of course. I said. I think that makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah.
For me, I can't listen to podcasts if I'm writing anything.
Oh,
because
no,
it's
no,
like
no.
the words are competing. That completely distracts. But that makes perfect sense with something like drawing or design work.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not competing. You consume the words, but you're spitting
Exactly.
out
Yeah.
visuals.
Yeah.
I think it's being self-aware of what of these things, because obviously you can't take all of the stuff we've said in this episode and use it because you're not designed in that way. You know, like with my 3-day last-minute self-imposed deadline, it's being self-aware and thinking, okay, well, how do I best work? How do I get the most distracted? You know, because some people can quickly look at social media and then go back and then they're all right. But some people look at social media and that's half their day gone because they've just gone down that rabbit hole. And so I think it's being self-aware and analysing your own working patterns and working with that rather than trying to cram in something that's not going to work. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Well, hopefully that helped everyone listening. Bit of a almost unfocused one, ironically, kind of jumping around a few bits. But I think the main thing is, like, it's not like we've got a perfect system. And despite that, we've all managed to succeed in our respective areas. And I feel like this is a recurring theme, right? We're not preaching perfection or anything like that. A lot of it is kind of accepting the way it is and just trying to hack at it as best you can. But outside of that, yeah, there's not that much you can do, and I think that's okay. Like, as long as you're loving what you're doing, don't beat yourself up too much.
Yeah.
Agree.
And we're all trying to figure this out, you know. We're all in the same boat, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole point is don't make yourself miserable, right? Like you were saying, kind of opposite of be happy. Like take from this what makes your day more pleasant, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Hopefully it helped you to realize that if you are struggling to find focus, you're definitely not alone. We hope that you're able to try some of the pointers from this week's episode to improve your productivity when it comes to your design projects. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. If today's episode did help you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is the best way for other creatives to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.